At the wedding reception, my ex saw my phone and said, "I left a note in your car. Why didn't you come?" The string lights above the reception tent threw soft gold across the linen tables. But the first thing I noticed was not the celebration. It was Olivia Morgan standing near the edge of the dance floor with her phone turned dark in one hand and an untouched champagne flute in the other, listening to the hum of a distant generator as if it were counting down for her. The air smelled of cut grass, roasted garlic, and late summer roses. A photographer kept asking people to step closer to the floral arch. Everything about the wedding was built to make the world feel easy for one evening. Olivia looked like the only person who had brought a crisis into it. She wore a modest champagne-wrapped dress with a cream shawl folded over one arm, the kind of polished event outfit that belonged in a room full of speeches and cameras. But her thumb was pressing a crease into the side of her small evening bag, hard enough that the leather bowed. She had always done that when she was trying not to show panic. 5 years ago, I would have noticed it faster than anyone. 5 years ago, I had failed to notice the thing that mattered most. I had not seen her since the night I missed her launch party, and our almost relationship turned into a silence neither of us knew how to break. I had carried the explanation for years, but explanations age badly when nobody asks for them. In my line of work, forcing an answer into a closed room only makes the door stronger. I am a crisis negotiator. My job is not to win arguments. It is to find the sentence that lets someone step back from an edge without feeling pushed. The rule drilled into me by every bad night and every trembling phone line is simple. You do not talk a jumper down by yelling. You listen until the ledge feels too cold. Across the lawn, with the generator humming behind the catering tent and the band turning a jazz standard into background noise, Olivia's silence had weight. She turned her head and saw me. For 1 second, everything between us was unfinished. Then her phone lit up again. She looked down, read 3 lines, and the hand around the champagne flute went still. I walked over, keeping my pace slow and my hands visible. That habit had followed me from standoffs in hospital roofs into ordinary rooms. No sudden movements when someone is already managing too much adrenaline. I stopped a few feet away, near a high-top table. "You're checking your phone every 3 minutes, I said, keeping my voice low enough that the nearest bridesmaid would not hear. "And you haven't taken a sip of that champagne." Olivia blinked once, then looked at the glass as if someone else had placed it in her hand. "Ethan." "Hello, Olivia." I took my own phone from my pocket and placed it face down on the high-top table between us. "Do you want me to pretend I didn't notice, or do you want the quiet version of help?" That almost made her smile. Almost. "I didn't know you were invited." "I wasn't. Marcus had a cancellation and decided he needed one more person at table 7 who knows how to talk to angry people." I glanced toward the dance floor, where the groom's college friends had started moving as one dangerous cluster. He may still need me later. A thin breath moved through her nose. The humor did not land all the way, but it landed enough to keep the moment from snapping. The generator kept humming behind the tent, steady and low. "You're working right now," I said. "Not officially, but in your head." Her eyes flicked to the phone. The screen lit again. She turned it down without reading the newest message. "I wish it was just in my head." She set the untouched champagne on the table and pressed both hands around the evening bag. "I have a vendor trying to ruin an 8-month production project 72 hours before global launch." I waited. Waiting is the part people underestimate. Most crises do not open because somebody says the perfect thing. They open because somebody finally lets the silence become safer than the lie. Olivia looked past my shoulder toward the reception tent, where the maid of honor was beginning to gather people for a speech. "It's the packaging," she said. "The product videos are for a global campaign. Every shot depends on the packaging color matching the approved reference images exactly. We signed off on muted terracotta. The final renders came back this afternoon in a harsh orange that makes the whole brand look wrong." "Did you approve the change?" "No." Her answer came fast, clean. "I sent the reference images 3 times. I sent the hex codes. I sent the color board, the package mock-ups, and the approved stills. The vendor controls the final delivery server, and now They're refusing to release the original files unless I sign a liability waiver clearing them of the delay penalty. I translated the words into structure: a locked server, a deadline, a vendor with leverage, a professional reputation tied to a paper trail someone else was trying to rewrite. What happens if you don't sign? I asked. The client may pull the campaign. Her voice stayed quiet, but the knuckles around the purse strap went pale. My agency will blame me for losing the account. And if the vendor's email gets there first, it will look like I signed off on the wrong files and panicked when the client caught it. Why not walk away from the vendor and rebuild? 3 reasons. She lifted one finger, practical even while cornered. 1, they control the render farm for the final 12 product videos. 2, the client's launch is Thursday morning in 4 markets, and legal has already approved the current sequence. 3, my boss is watching this project because it's the one that decides whether I get the production division or lose it to someone who thinks reference images are optional. There it was. The generator hummed. The band started the intro to another song. Olivia looked very still inside the noise. There's a quiet patio table behind the catering tent. I said, I can bring you a plate. If you want me involved, we can look at the chain of custody together. If you don't, I will go back to table 7 and let Marcus use me as an emergency buffer between his uncle and the open bar. This time, she did smile. It was small and tired, but real enough to count. You still do that? Do what? Make the worst option sound slightly ridiculous. It lowers oxygen demand in the room. We're outside. Then I'm expanding the room. Her thumb stopped pressing the bag. She looked at the phone again, then at me. I want help. But I direct the technical side. Your project, I said. Your call. She nodded once. I brought her a plate before she could decide she had no appetite. Roasted vegetables, chicken, a roll, and a small square of wedding cake. Because I had seen enough crises to know sugar sometimes arrives as strategy. I set it beside her laptop on a patio table half-screened by potted olive trees. Olivia opened her laptop and arranged the windows with quick, efficient clicks. I took the chair across from her instead of beside her, leaving the screen angle in her control. Start with the reference images, I said. She ate one bite of chicken as if remembering the existence of food had irritated her, then pulled up a folder labeled Final Approved Reference Set. The first image showed the product packaging in warm terracotta, soft, earthy, and calm. The second image was the vendor's final render. The orange was sharper, almost neon under the studio lights. That color changes the whole emotional temperature, Olivia said. Her voice strengthened when the problem became technical. The client sells premium pantry goods. It's supposed to feel grounded, handcrafted, trustworthy. That orange makes it look like discount seasonal packaging. I believe you. You haven't seen the whole board. I heard how you said emotional temperature. People don't fake that kind of irritation. She gave me a quick look, half warning and half gratitude, then opened her email thread. For the next 40 minutes, the wedding faded behind us. Olivia walked me through the reference images, the approved stills, the hex codes, the color management notes, the vendor portal, and the delivery schedule. I asked short questions and wrote answers on a paper napkin when the Notes app on my phone felt too intrusive. At 4:12 p.m. on Tuesday, the vendor had acknowledged receipt of her final visual consistency guidelines. At 4:39 p.m., someone on their account team had forwarded an attachment to their rendering department. The file path at the bottom of that forwarded message ended with archive-month-old refs. I leaned slightly closer to the screen, careful not to crowd her. Stop there. Olivia froze the cursor. What? That path. I pointed with the capped end of a pen I had borrowed from the gift table. They didn't route your approved reference set. They routed the old cached version. She looked at the file path. The color left her face. They used the old file. Looks like it. And now they're claiming I gave the wrong directive because admitting they routed the wrong version means they owe the delay penalty. That is the leverage. Her hand closed around the back of the chair instead of the evening bag. That penalty is $250,000. Then they have reason to be creative. She gave me a look. Professionally creative, I clarified, not morally creative. Morally creative people keep me employed. A laugh slipped out of her before she could stop it. A warm beat after the first escalation. The generator hummed beyond the tent like it approved of practical comedy. Olivia took another bite of food, then opened the vendor's latest email. The message was polished and dangerous. It suggested there had been multiple evolving creative directions and requested that Olivia sign a waiver acknowledging responsibility for timeline impacts. It mentioned the delivery server twice and the Thursday launch 3 times. It never used the word mistake. "They want me to sign tonight," she said. "Of course they do. If I don't, they'll tell my boss I'm blocking the corrected files. What outcome do you need?" She looked up from the screen. "Not what do you fear," I said. "What outcome do you need?" Her shoulders lowered half an inch. "I need the correct renders delivered by 9 tomorrow morning. I need them to absorb the overtime cost. I need their legal team to stop pushing the waiver. And I need a clean paper trail showing I provided the correct references before they routed the old files." "That's 4 outcomes. Good. Now we remove everything that isn't one of those 4. We drafted the response together. She wrote the technical explanation, the approved color board, the exact hex codes, the final reference image timestamps, the color grading notes, and the reason the old cached file could not be considered a valid directive. I shaped the negotiation. No apology, no emotional language, no speculation, just time, action, evidence, consequence. When she typed, "We are deeply concerned by your misrepresentation," I slid the water glass toward her and waited. She noticed, took a drink, and deleted the sentence herself. Too much? True, probably useful, not yet. She replaced it with, "The attached metadata establishes the approved reference set and the vendor-side routing discrepancy." "That is colder," I said. "Good cold or lawsuit cold?" "Good cold. Ledge feels cold. People step back." She looked at me for half a second longer than the joke required, then returned to the screen. At 11:58 p.m., she sent the email. It demanded delivery of corrected files by 9:80 a.m., rejection of the waiver, preservation of all server logs, and confirmation that the vendor would absorb all overtime rendering costs created by their routing error. She copied her boss, her agency's legal counsel, the client's production liaison, and the vendor's CEO. The laptop fan whispered. The generator hummed. The wedding crowd cheered from inside the tent at something neither of us had seen. Olivia closed the laptop with both hands and left her palms resting on the lid. For a moment, the table looked like the only solid thing in the garden. "Thank you," she said. "You did the work. You organized the room. I organized the facts." She looked toward the dark lawn beyond the patio. "You always did. Until you didn't." The air changed. The present crisis had been stabilized, and the past, patient and badly filed, took its place on the table between us. I did not defend myself. A person in pain can feel defense as another door closing. I sat still and let the generator hum fill the first few seconds. "When I got promoted to lead producer 5 years ago," she said, "I thought you understood what that meant. I thought you understood what that night meant." I did. Her chair scraped lightly against the patio stone. "Then why did you vanish?" I held my hands loosely on the table, nowhere near hers. "The night of my launch party," she continued, her voice steady enough to hurt, "I waited for 2 hours. People kept asking where you were because I had been foolish enough to mention you were coming. Then the next morning, I drove to your apartment. Your car was still there. I left a note under the windshield wiper." The generator seemed louder after that. She looked directly at me, and the title line landed with 5 years of silence behind it. "I left a note in your car. Why didn't you come?" My first instinct was to explain quickly. That instinct is almost always selfish. It tries to escape discomfort instead of respecting the person who has been carrying the question. So I let the question stay open for one full breath. "I never saw it that morning," I said. Her expression did not change. "Ethan, I was in Seattle. A precinct requested me for a barricade situation that turned into a 30-hour negotiation. I sent a message to your assistant when I realized I would miss the party. It was formal. It was inadequate. I know that now." "You sent a message to my assistant." "I did. I needed you." "I believe you." That stopped her more effectively than any defense could have. She had expected argument. I gave her the thing I should have given her then, attention without escape. I came back 3 days later. I said, my car would not start. Alternator. I had it towed from the parking garage before I even went upstairs because I was still half asleep and had another consultation scheduled that afternoon. Olivia looked down at the closed laptop. The mechanic found the note 6 months later. I said, it had slipped between the windshield and the dashboard trim. He thought it was a parking ticket that had melted into the vent. He handed it to me folded into a shape that looked like it had been through weather, heat, and punishment. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. The paper was still there, because some things become anchors when you do not know how to repair them. I unfolded it only once, then set it on the table between us without pushing it toward her. The note was small, square, and worn soft at the edges. Olivia did not touch it at first. Her hand hovered above the folded crease, then pulled back once before landing on the corner. When she saw her own handwriting, the sharpness in her eyes had nowhere left to go. I read it 6 months too late. I said, by then you were at a new agency. Your assistant told me you were traveling. You had stopped calling. I thought your silence was a boundary. In my job, when the line goes dead, you don't force contact. You do not breach. You wait, or you leave. You assumed. Yes, so did I. The admission came out so quietly, the generator almost took it. Neither of us moved. I thought you didn't care enough to read it, she said. I thought you cared enough to choose a life without me. A failure of chain of custody, I said. Because if I did not give the pain one small handle, it would become too large to hold. She looked at me, and despite everything, a tired laugh shook loose. That is the most painfully you explanation I have ever heard. I have worse ones. I know. Her phone buzzed across the table. The vendor's CEO was calling. The practical world returned with no respect for unfinished emotional history. Olivia looked at the screen, then at the note, then at me. Her fingers closed around the paper once, not taking it, just acknowledging that it was real. Do you want me to handle this, or do you want to? I asked. She straightened in her chair. I want to take it. I want you beside me. Then I'm beside you. She opened the laptop and accepted the video call. The vendor's CEO appeared on screen in an office far too bright for midnight. He had the polished panic of a man who had just discovered that a client had learned where the fuse box was. Olivia, he began, we need to be careful with language here. The visual consistency parameters are subjective, and your team provided multiple creative references over the course of production. Olivia shared her screen before he could continue. The parameters are not subjective, she said. Her voice was calm, lower than usual, the kind of calm that comes from standing on evidence instead of hope. The hex codes are absolute. The approved reference images are time-stamped. Your team acknowledged receipt at 4:12 p.m. Tuesday and routed an archive set to the render team 27 minutes later. We are not signing a liability waiver. You will deliver corrected renders by 9 ESM, matching this exact visual consistency, and you will absorb the overtime cost of your rendering farm. He opened his mouth. She clicked to the file path screenshot. And your legal department will preserve server logs. If the logs disappear, we will treat that as spoliation and proceed accordingly. I said nothing. I did not have to. My only job was to remain still enough that she could hear herself hold the line. The CEO looked at the file path, then at the copied legal names in the email header. We can expedite the corrected renders, he said. By 9 a.m., Olivia replied. You may have partial delivery by 8. No partial delivery? Complete corrected set, 12 videos, matching approved references, no waiver? He swallowed, complete set by 9. Confirm in writing within 10 minutes. Yes. She ended the call. The laptop screen went dark. For a few seconds, we listened to the generator hum behind the tent. A cheer rose and faded again. You didn't say a word. She said, you did not need me to... I thought I did. You needed a witness, not a replacement. She looked at the folded note. This time she picked it up fully and held it in both hands. You carried this for 4.5 years? Every day. Why? Because it reminded me that listening is not the same thing as asking. I heard your silence and mistook it for an answer. I did not want to make that mistake again. She opened the note enough to see the first line. I did not look. The words belonged to the 29-year-old version of her who had been brave enough to write them. I need you in my corner. Ethan, if you are still there, call me. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her evening bag. At 12:21 a.m., the vendor's written confirmation arrived. At 12:24 a.m., Olivia's boss, Marin Blake, called. Olivia looked at the name on the screen and winced. Production director? I asked. Executive producer. She has a talent for sounding calm right before she removes your spine with a butter knife. That is vivid. She once called a storyboard emotionally undercooked. Nobody has recovered. Another pressure valve. Small, human, necessary. Do you want to take it alone? I asked. No. She accepted the call and put it on speaker. Marin, I know it's late. I received the email. Marin said. Her voice was sharp but not unfair. Tell me what I'm walking into tomorrow morning. Olivia did not look at me. Good. She did not need to. You're walking into a recoverable vendor breach, she said. They routed the archived reference set instead of the approved final set. We have metadata, email timestamps, file path evidence, and written confirmation that corrected renders will arrive by 9. I refused the liability waiver. There was a pause. Did you loop legal? Yes. Client liaison? Yes. Do we have proof that the correct files were sent before their mistake? Yes. I'll forward the chain of custody packet in 5 minutes. Another pause. Then Marin said, That's the right call. Olivia's hand tightened once around the phone. Marin continued, I'm not pleased this happened at all, but I'm pleased you did not sign anything to make it quieter. Get me the packet. Sleep if possible. Be on the client call at 10:30. I will. And Olivia? Yes? Good work keeping the paper trail clean. The call ended. Olivia stared at the dark phone screen. Your butter knife woman approves, I said. She covered her mouth with one hand, and the laugh that came out this time was steadier. She never approves before coffee. Then we may have witnessed a departmental miracle. We built the chain of custody packet before leaving the patio. Olivia pulled the metadata exports. I organized the sequence into a timeline a tired executive could understand in 30 seconds. She added thumbnail stills comparing the approved terracotta to the vendor's harsh orange. I suggested putting the color board first, not last. Lead with the thing the client cares about, I said, then prove how it broke. That's exactly what we tell junior producers. Crisis negotiation and video production may share more blood than expected. Both involve people insisting the obvious is subjective. That will go on my tombstone. At 1:08 a.m., the packet went to Marin, legal, and the client liaison. Olivia finally closed the laptop again. This time, her hands did not stay on the lid. She sat back and looked toward the tent, where the reception had softened into late-night stragglers and tired laughter. I should go say goodbye to the bride, she said. Then go. You're not going to tell me to sleep? I am not currently in charge of your bedtime. Generous? I am widely known for my restraint. She looked at me, and there was the old familiarity, not restored completely, but visible under the dust. The launch is Thursday, she said. If the files come in tomorrow, there's still color review, client approval, and final export. I'm going to have a quiet dinner afterward. No vendors, no emergency calls, no emotionally undercooked storyboards. That sounds wise. I'm setting a reservation for 2, 7 o'clock. She was not asking me to rescue her. She was creating a next step, clear and voluntary. I'll be there at 6:50, I said. Her gaze dropped to the evening bag where the folded note now rested. You always were early. Not always. The truth sat between us, not as a weapon this time, but as a repaired wire marked with tape so no one forgot where it had been cut. The first corrected files arrived at 7:43 a.m. I know because I was awake in a guest room Marcus had bullied the hotel into finding for me after he realized I had disappeared from the reception. He sent me one text that read, Did you get pulled into a situation? I replied, Yes. He replied, Of course you did. The groom says, "Thank you for preventing Uncle Raymond from giving a fourth toast." The render set was not complete. Olivia called at 7:46. "No hello?" I asked. "No complete set." I sat up and reached for the notepad on the bedside table. How many missing? 2 product videos, the hero shot and the regional variant. They sent 10 corrected videos and 2 previews with watermarks. Did they represent it as complete delivery? Yes. Then the breach is now cleaner, not messier. I hate that you sound calm. I am not calm. I am alphabetizing the fire. That makes no sense. It makes some sense before coffee. She exhaled. I have the client call at 10:30. Do you want me on the line? I want you on mute until I ask. Excellent boundary. By 8:15, I was back at the patio table with hotel coffee that tasted like ambition and burned beans. Olivia arrived 10 minutes later in a cream blazer over the dress from the night before, hair pinned back with a pencil she had stolen from the venue gift table. The shawl was draped around her shoulders, and under one arm she carried her laptop like a shield that had learned to become a tool. She did not greet me first. She opened the laptop, turned it toward me, and pointed to the server delivery receipt. They renamed the preview files to look final. That's not panic anymore, I said. That is intent. I know. What do you want? A breach notice drafted but not sent until after the client call. If they deliver by 10, we keep it in reserve. If not, legal sends it at 10:01. I took the notepad and wrote breach notice, hold until 10:01 across the top. She looked at it and smiled despite herself. You write headings like a hostage note. I like clarity. You like terrifying stationery. That too. We worked for 90 minutes. She pulled the server receipts and watermarked previews. I structured the breach notice. We cited the written confirmation from 12:21 a.m., the incomplete 7:43 delivery, the misleading file names, and the launch dependency. At 9:52, the missing hero shot arrived. At 9:58, the regional variant arrived. At 10:04, Olivia opened all 12 renders side by side, checked the reference images, and exported the corrected comparison board for the client. At 10:30, she took the call with Maran, the client liaison, and 2 people from legal. I sat off camera with the breach notice in draft form, not as a threat, but as a safety net. The client's production liaison, Nadia, spoke first. We saw the delay notice. Should we prepare alternate launch assets? No, Olivia said. The corrected renders are in review now. I'm sharing the comparison board. The color variance has been corrected to match the approved terracotta range, and we have vendor confirmation absorbing the overtime cost. She walked them through every image. She did not over-explain. She did not apologize for the vendor's error. She showed the approved reference, the faulty render, the corrected render, and the timestamp. When Nadia asked, "Can you guarantee final export today?" Olivia did not look at me. "Yes," she said. "If the client gives sign-off by noon, my team can final export by 5. I've already cleared the review queue and prepared the naming convention." Marin said nothing until the end. Then she said, "Proceed." One word. In Olivia's world, it sounded like applause. After the call, Olivia closed her eyes for one measured breath. Then she opened them and sent the render package to the client. "Breakfast?" I asked. "I may never eat again." "That is a bad long-term plan." "Coffee first." "That is a worse long-term plan wearing better shoes." She accepted the croissant I pushed across the table anyway. By Thursday morning, the global campaign launched on schedule. I watched the first live product video from my office between 2 calls. The packaging color held steady across every shot, muted terracotta, grounded and warm, exactly as Olivia had described it. I sent one message. The emotional temperature is correct. Her reply arrived 3 minutes later. Do not become unbearable. Too late, I wrote. That evening, I arrived at the restaurant at 6:50. Olivia was already there. You're early, I said. You're predictable. I prefer consistent. You would. The dinner was quiet in the best way. We did not solve 5 years in one sitting. We did not pretend a lost note and a missed party could be folded into a romantic anecdote without edges. We talked about the campaign, the vendor's penalty, Marin's single-word praise, my worst calls, her worst directors, and the strange discipline of not filling every silence just because it appears. At the end, she placed the folded note on the table between us. "I don't want this to stay as evidence," she said. "What do you want it to become?" A reminder, not of the mistake, of the question we didn't ask. I nodded. She took the note back and tucked it into her wallet. Over the next 8 weeks, we learned the difference between contact and pressure. We met twice for coffee and once for a walk that ended early because she received a call from legal about the vendor's formal corrective action report. I waited on a park bench while she handled it herself. After she hung up, she sat beside me and said, "They admitted routing the archived reference set. What consequence?" "Penalty absorbed, new server access protocol. Written apology to the client." That is useful. It is not emotionally satisfying. Most useful things aren't. She leaned back against the bench and looked up at the trees. Emotionally undercooked consequences. Exactly. Warmth returned not as lightning, but as repeated proof. She sent calendar invites instead of waiting for me to guess. I answered direct questions directly. When a negotiation call ran long, I told her before I disappeared into it. When a client review went well, she texted me one line. Fully baked, lightly salted. At week 8, Olivia invited me to a small viewing room at her agency for the final campaign case study presentation. The room had gray walls, 6 chairs, a monitor, and no champagne. Maren sat at one end of the table with a notebook. Nadia from the client team appeared on video. 2 junior producers sat along the wall, pretending not to be fascinated by the fact that Olivia had brought someone. She introduced me simply. "This is Ethan Walker. He helped me organize the first response when the vendor attempted to shift liability." Maren looked at me over the top of her glasses. "The negotiator." "Yes," Olivia said. "Good. You kept her from sending the first version of that email." Olivia looked offended. "The first version was honest." "I assume it was also combustible," Maren said. "Only in places." I kept my face neutral. It took effort. Olivia ran the presentation herself. She showed the original approved color board, the vendor error, the chain of custody, the corrected process, the client launch results, and the updated server protocol her team had implemented. Her voice did not shake once. "At the end," Nadia said, "we want Olivia leading the next product film series." Maren wrote something in her notebook, closed it, and said, "Agreed." Olivia's hand stayed still on the clicker. After the meeting, in the hallway, she looked at me and finally allowed the smile she had held back in the room. "You didn't say a word again. You keep giving me no reason to." "I like that. I'm becoming fond of it too." She looked down the hallway toward the production floor, where one of her junior producers was trying to carry too many foam boards at once, without thinking. Olivia stepped forward and took half the stack from him. "Use both hands," she told him, "and never trust foam board in a cross breeze." He nodded as if receiving sacred knowledge. I watched her walk back into her world, not needing me to open the door, and felt something settle. It was closer to recognition. The ledge did not feel cold anymore because neither of us was standing on it. A year later, the patio of our shared apartment was quiet, with only the distant muted hum of city traffic rising from the avenue below. It was not the same as a catering generator, but sometimes, early in the morning, it found the same low note. I sat at the small metal table with black coffee and a consulting contract I had pretended to read for 20 minutes. Olivia had been inside on a call with a commercial real estate agent, using her calm producer voice, the one that meant she was either winning or preparing to win. The sliding glass door opened. She stepped out in an oversized sweater, hair clipped up badly enough that one curl had declared independence near her temple. She did not say good morning. She walked over, took my coffee, drank from it, made a face, and set it back exactly where it had been. "Still terrible," she said. Consistent. Not a defense. A brand position. She dropped a set of brass keys on top of the contract. The keys were attached to a leather tag stamped with the logo of a downtown commercial studio space. For a second, I only looked at them. "I signed the lease," she said. "My own production studio. Separate server, separate render farm. No vendor gets to hold my files hostage again. I picked up the keys, felt their weight, and handed them back to her. You did the work. I did. You earned every inch of it. I know. She smiled when she said it. Not arrogant, not fragile, just certain. Marin invested. Voluntarily? With only 3 emotionally undercooked comments. A generous woman. A terrifying woman. She can be both. Olivia sat beside me and set the keys between our coffee mugs. Then she pulled the folded note from her wallet. It was kept in a clear sleeve now, preserved but not hidden. I'm putting this in the studio, she said, not framed dramatically, just in the desk drawer. Why the drawer? So I remember to ask the question before I decide the answer. The city traffic hummed below us. Somewhere inside, her laptop chimed with a calendar reminder. She ignored it for once. You don't talk a jumper down by yelling, she said, looking at the keys. You listen until the ledge feels too cold, I finished. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Public enough for the morning, private enough to mean more than performance. I turned my palm up and let her choose how tightly to hold on. Trust, I had learned, was not built by dramatic speeches or perfect timing. It was built by showing up with clean hands, clear facts, and enough patience to let the other person step forward by choice. The keys rested between us, solid and bright in the morning light. The end.